Hey, baby, it's Bonnie DeShong, and this is Bonnie's Eye, where we have great conversations with interesting people. And this young man that we're going to be talking to today, Tarell, you are an amazing person. You are award winning, Tony nominated, all of this other great stuff that is going on. Everyone, in case you can't see it up on your screen, Tarell Alvin McCraney is on with me today. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me, Miss Molly.
Oh, no problem at all. No problem at all. I, this is the first time I've met you, but I have been so proud of you. Just, just watching you go through and creating with all the things that you're creating. How did you feel when you got that Academy Award for Moonlight?
Pretty amazing. I was shocked. I sometimes still am pretty shocked about it. But when they called the film's name um, for Mahershala, when Mahershala won in the actor category, um, and then Barry and I got called for the screenwriting category. It just became one of those moments where I was like, this is unreal. And then finally, as everyone saw, with the strangeness, but also wildly celebratory moment of finding out that it won Best Picture. Um, yeah, I mean, sometimes you just can't believe. I mean, you have to tell a story in order to know it's true. So I think for the rest of my life, I'll be retelling that story with the help of social media, and always being able to know that it happened because we can tell it. But it's great. It was wonderful. It was amazing. And I just remember we were doing press in Chicago for the film even before we had been nominated for anything. Um, and it was surprising how much, though I'm not, a Chicago native, um, this, the Windy City has embraced me as a second son, as it were. And it was amazing to do screenings of David Makes Man at DuSable, and I mean just always um, I always feel so welcomed here, as if even though I went to college here, I went to undergrad here and spent a lot of my adult life and my early life as an artist. I wrote Moonlight here. Folks from the Shy always make me feel welcome, so it was sort of a homecoming, bringing that film here. And yeah, I sometimes I get shy because it feels it's always, I don't know how I don't know what to attribute it to. I just know that I sometimes get a little shy at how much people want to celebrate, and but I don't stop them from celebrating. I don't.
Of course not. You can't. You can't.
Yeah.
Because Chicago, we will claim you.
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
If you step
Yeah.
foot in Chicago, we will claim you. We will
Yeah.
embrace you. Now, what I want to know though, Terrell, is you make everybody sees someone as a playwright or a screenwriter or something, and they figure, oh, it just happens.
Mm.
How did you get to a point where you knew that being a playwright was your place, is what you wanted to do?
Well, I came to school for acting here at DePaul University, and while I was doing that, I also was taking writing classes with Carlos Morillos and a few other folks here in the city, um, and I just realized that there were so many. My friend Sterling Brown, shout out to Sterling Brown, um, from This Is Us and from everything, but
Everything.
he says often when we meet up and talk. Um, we have a collective of brothers who just get together and talk about work. And one of the things he's always reminding us is that, look, as many people that are black, that's how many ways there are to be black. And if you deny that, that's true, then that's anti-black, right? That as just as myriad as ways of us that there are in the world, they're just those are the ways that there are to be black in this world. Um, and I just found that we were only being allowed to represent a very small, finite road of who we are. Um, and that just felt um, I don't know, strange to me because I mean, again, you have to tell a story in order to believe it, right? It only becomes true in the telling of it, right? And in the remembering of it, and I think the for me, there was so much of us that we weren't telling, or that we were only seeing a part of. I mean, and again, there's not that's not to say we didn't have, an incredible legacy from Lorraine Hansberry to Gwendolyn Brooks to August Wilson to Standoff for sure, to Intozaki Shange. At the same time, there was just that, calling those names over and over again and seeing those pieces over and over again meant that we were going to be sort of locking ourselves into a kind of narrow gate. And I just felt like, well, why don't we just keep adding to it, no matter what the case, no matter um, how much we love it or don't love it, or how much some people feel a way about it, or some people think it is the only way. I mean, it's to me, I just kept going, well, there's room here. I just feel like we got to get in and show that there is some room. And so I used what I could as an actor to make, stories that filled some of those gaps, or not filled gaps, but also just told portions of the story. And again, I don't feel like I cover everything. I don't cover enough. That's why I'm always encouraging earlier writers, always wanting to give space and engage, younger writers or early career authors, particularly Black folks, particularly Black women, to do the same, encouraging their voice to be prominent. So, that's how it started. That's how it happened. And I really, I was fortunate. I was fortunate to come along at a time where people really respected that ethos, respected the ethos of trying to make that clear. But yeah, for example, I think what it was right before the pandemic in 2019, we did a show at Steppenwolf called Ms. Black for President, and which is based on the true story of Terrence Allen Smith donning Joan Jett Black to run for mayor of Chicago, and then to get on the floor of the DNC and try to run for president of the United States. And that story, which helped galvanize so much during a crisis in our country and in our city, around the AIDS crisis that was affecting the Black community, the gay community, the queer community. It sat there for 30 years and just was not told, and few folks knew about it, including myself, embarrassingly. And why? For what reason? For what reason did we not need to know about this? This
Just about
interesting.
any reason that we don't get to know about. I mean, like today is Juneteenth. How
Exactly.
many people have actually known about Juneteenth? Black, white, or whatever. I mean, there's so many that the histories, or what they call the minor histories to some people, but the
Hmm.
histories that impact us as a people and a nation and a country
Yes,
are
ma'am.
lost.
Absolutely. I learned about Juneteenth in school at DePaul from a woman named Cheryl Lynn Bruce. Um,
Cheryl Lynn Brooks, good friend of mine.
yeah, and so at 19 or 20 years old was the first time I ever heard about Juneteenth, and that's a long time to not hear about something so pivotal in the
Mhm.
history of a people. And it's just, so I agree. Those things are the reasons why I got in, as it were. I wanted to get in it. I was like, yo, there's stuff here I want to get into, I want to talk about, and I want to engage. And we're not going to do it by rehashing any of these Shakespeare or Chekhov plays. So let's do it.
And that's the truth. It's like seeing at one point, my degree is in theater, and I moved to
Mm,
Chicago to do theater.
mm,
And um, it, back in that time in the 70s, there was just so much going on, new things coming out.
mm,
Then at a point, it seemed like we got a little stagnant, and it was like, where are the new ideas? Where are the new plays? Where? And I
mhm,
was so glad to see young people like you coming out and writing about what is going on, and also things that are going to also transcend into generations to come.
mm.
Which brings us to Choir Boy
Yeah,
at the Steppenwolf Theatre. When did you become an ensemble member?
that is a good question. I think I became an ensemble member in 2010. but don't quote me on that. I think it was 2010, 2011. Um, and I was invited to the ensemble by the ensemble and Martha Levy right after we did a production of the Brother Sister plays. Um, and that production was so, I mean, people still come up to me and talk about that production, which I really appreciate. I mean, there's brothers who are like, yo, I saw that play. I was there. I was in the theater. And it just, it just makes you feel good to know that folks was rooting for you for a long time. And then, I wrote Choir Boy around the same time, but particularly I wanted to talk about what you just said, legacy. What do we hand to young people? What do we give to them as the legacy? And the Negro spirituals that we sing, the spirituals, the Black spirituals that come from as far away as the African coast to Alaska, are with us as a people, and our young people are being handed the mantle of protecting that, right? And what about it do they want to protect, and why do they understand the importance to it? I remember Alvin Ailey saying something in an interview once about Revelations, that pivotal piece that he created, I believe in 1958, 59, that has been seen around the world. And he said, watching each generation do it, right? And I think he died in 1990, but he had seen a few generation of dancers come through and do Revelations. He said the technique is getting great. The technique, the dancers' technique has never been better. But do they know what it means to, sit down in the hot sun after all day at being at service? Or do they know what it means to beat back the water and beat the water moccasins away while you try to baptize somebody for the first time in all white, in a creek or a lake nearby? Like, do they understand? Do they hear the wind, as they walk through the mourners march, or in the yellow section, in the whispering section? Do they know what it means to that the time of night is draws nigh and we have to stay ready? Or are they really running for redemption in Sinner Man? And I remember thinking about that and thinking, what we must do is give the opportunity for young folks to infuse those moments with themselves, right? So yes, Wade in the Water is a classic song, and is definitely talking about very specific things at the time that it was sort of made and given to us as a people. At the same time, these young people wade in the water every day in their own lives in different ways. And the currents for them might be different, but God's still trouble in the water. And so what does that mean for them, and how is that equally as important as them holding on to the legacy? And so the play is really about watching young people figure out who they are and how heavy this weight of the legacy is, but also what does it mean to them, and how do we let go? How do we let go and let them do it? And how can we not, I think sometimes, and I might be a little more candid than I mean to be, but when I was an assistant for Mr. Wilson, there were a lot of folks who did not like that. It seemed that I was a kind of heir apparent to him, which I don't claim in any way, shape, or form. I feel like there is no heir apparent. There was an August Wilson, and there was an August Wilson. That's it. But I do feel like I do take full honor in knowing that he cared for me greatly and did what he could by sending community around me when I was an early writer. So I do take that on. But there are people who are pissed that this queer Black man from Miami was being sort of given a nod by August Wilson. And I always thought about that. I was like, well, why? Who cares? But you have to remember, as much as we live in a racist society, we live in a patriarchal society, and anything feminine or anything femme or not, hyper masculine, is thought of as not good or not in line with our values, and which makes no sense, because I would argue that the structure of our community has been held together by the feminine and by matriarchs. But that's a whole nother podcast. We can talk
Well,
another time about
I'm
that.
trying to tell you because in Africa there are so many matriarchal societies that run it. Not the men, it's the women that deal with it. That's why we had the babies, and y'all can't handle it. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
But the whole
Absolutely.
point, it's funny to me because as I've gotten older, I'm seeing the slip back. I mean, when I was younger in the 70s and stuff like that, I couldn't, Mom and them couldn't understand the thought process, or as you say, the storms that we were going through, because back when I was growing up, we were still Negro and colored. Okay. And then when I came in and we're talking about when I'm black and I got an afro, my mama said, what, who, what, where? So my fight was different from their fight. My niece's fight is different from mine. And the kids today, because now in my mind, I'm going, I don't understand. I'm trying to understand, but I don't understand. The pants below the booty and the wearing just about anything and the nails and lashes out to here. I feel so out of touch.
Sure.
But then I have to think back and say, there was a time when my generation was going through the same thing.
Right.
And as you were talking about with Choir Boy and the music, how the music, feeling it inside for what it means for you today, as far as what it may have meant for me back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it again, and also I listen, I'm 42, so there are days I absolutely don't know what the hell the kids are talking about. Like, I don't. My students come in telling me stuff, and I'm like, who? What happened? What? I mean, and we're not that far in age, but it's far enough, and the world shifts so swiftly now, right? They have so much access to the world in a way that it took my generation longer to get. That that things shift, and so a whisper of a thing is heard around the world in no time, or a slap is seen around the world in no time, right?
Right.
So that knowing that they metabolize things in a wholly different way, there's a part of me that says, how do I make room? Right? I just want to make room. My job isn't to understand if they want to put, when I was a kid, I put all this aluminum foil in my windows because for some reason I wanted it to be dark in there and like make it a sort of photosensitive room, or like, my mom was like, what the hell are you doing? But it was, and at the same time, it wasn't her job necessarily to understand the room, but she knew I needed a place to sleep. She knew I needed a place to retreat to. She knew I needed a place where I could go and feel like this is my space to get back whatever I need. And especially recognizing that I was an introvert very early. She was like, oh no, you need, I mean, even there were 4 of us, and my sister, who is the youngest, is a girl. My mother felt very strongly that I needed a room by myself. And I think it's because, I know it's because she actually said, she was like, you don't charge like other people. You don't get energy like other people when you're around other people. You get around people too long, you start getting upset, you start getting, anxious, and you need space away. So I always took that grace with me. It's not my job to understand completely what every story my students or other early artists are trying to do. Let's just make a little room for them, though. Let's make some space so that they set up to mess up, because they need to mess up. How many times, how many times we need to fail to get better. And so, often our Black artists aren't afforded that. They aren't afforded a room to mess up and try better. Now, we also tend to give, too much latitude to specific people, mostly male, right? We give, oh yeah, you can do anything and get away with it, as opposed to, other people who don't fit within that lane. We sort of sometimes demonize them too early and don't even give them a chance. But yeah, the play is all about that. It's about making room for the things we don't understand necessarily, and how sometimes we, as Black people, or it's a conversation around our institutions, we fail to recognize that what's best for our legacy is not necessarily the same old. It might be new. It might be different.
It has to be. It has
Mm.
to be. And we are some of the biggest critics of our own,
Oh, sure.
and so in trying to hold close, like I said before, when Mama said, she first heard George and the Funkadelics, it was like, what is that? That's not music.
Right.
Brooke Benton and all of these,
Hmm.
that's music. And
Hmm.
then here I am listening to some of the rap that is going on right now on radio. And I'm being in radio for over 30 years and
Mm.
seeing how the message has changed. I can't, it's like I understand that there needs to be a change, but I'm not sure if I like it,
Mm.
but it's not up to me.
Mm.
It's people expressing themselves in the way that they need to express.
Oh, I bet you there are corners of it that you'll like. I mean, that's the problem. That has always been our problem in the community is that your mama heard George and P Funk, but she didn't hear all of the kind of progressing from the jazz of that era into funk, into
Right,
soul, like you did, right?
right.
And so when young people point to me and they go, "Yeah, I like that," which is a mainstream thing that, of course, will make it to me because that's what I'm hearing. But then they show me the underground or the mixtape and I go, "Oh, that's beautiful. I
Yeah.
love what they're doing there. I love that experimentation. That's gorgeous." Or, there's this artist in Chicago named Blue Bone, queer rapper. I mean, this kid is he's got the Orisha in his work and
Wow.
in their work, and it's just amazing. It is stunning. And so you say, well, maybe the kids are all right. You know what I
Right,
mean? Maybe
right.
the kids are all right. And how do we make sure we can support everything that isn't going to rise to mainstream? Because again, mainstream is controlled, as you know, being in radio, not by us always. And so what makes it to all the airwaves and constantly may not be what we would choose it to be. But they're, the young folk are really making efforts in ways that, like you say, I can think back and go, well, yeah, I remember I had some friends who had a band and they were doing some cool stuff and they didn't necessarily make it into music in that way, but they became producers or they became managers of artists and they have some, so I trust that that's still happening. I trust that they're still finding ways to engage the folks who are really, um, speaking for the things we can't see or the things that are really cool. I
Mhm.
love the resurgence of Afro beats for us. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. I've been listening to that music my entire life, growing up in basically Miami, which is the Caribbean.
Mhm.
Um, and to hear it in so many new ways and being infused in so many ways here in the States, but also in London and on the continent. Um, that's kind of it makes me smile. It makes me happy. And I may not understand all of it. I may not be in the middle of all of it, but I just want to make room, like I said.
Well, that part is like a thread that has gone on through. It's almost like our ancestry, because when you
Hmm.
hear it, you can't help but react to it in
Hmm.
whatever age you are. If you are
Hmm.
Black, you hear that beat and you have to react to it. Let's talk about some of the, before we have to go, because I know that you're on a time frame, but the actors in the
Yeah,
show. Let's
yeah,
talk about some of them.
yeah. They're great. They're amazing. I mean, first of all, we got to work with Kent Gash, who I've worked with before, who is directing the piece, and so that was pretty stunning and amazing to me. And then we have a crew of young fellas who I just think are going to, you know, I just tell me when you see it, and we'll have another conversation about it because Tyler, Gilbert, Sheldon, um, Richard, they come onto that stage with a kind of presence that is stunning, and then they sing all these songs a cappella. So there
Wow.
is no orchestration. It's just them making those sounds. So, and I know you're gonna go in and be like, okay, cool, I hear that, but I want you, when you hear it, I want you to know it's just them. It is only them. There is a little amplification just when they're in the far back, but that's it. There are no mics on them. They are singing for their lives, and the amount of sound that they make in that, you know, 300 seat theater is phenomenal. It is incredible, and so I can't wait for you all to see it.
I'm going to be seeing it on Saturday, the 25th.
Okay,
So
Oh,
I'll be
great.
there on Saturday. I hope I get to see you in person
I'll
and
be
meet
there.
you in person. But yeah, I'm going, and I can't wait. I can't, because number one, I love Steppenwolf's theater.
Oh, thank you.
It's beautiful. And I say this all the time. I went to Illinois State with a lot
Mm,
of the founders and the ensemble of Steppenwolf.
yeah,
And I was never as good as they were, but still,
sure you were.
but still, it was my path to where I am. But going to the theater there is just an experience within itself because the theaters, both of them, are so beautiful
Mm,
and so acoustically sound,
mm.
and it's just a wonderful place to enjoy a story that's being told that evening. So Tarell, thank you so much for being with me today, and I
Oh, no,
can't wait
thank
to
you.
meet you Saturday.
Oh, thank you so much. And thanks for coming out. See you soon.
Oh, we will. So everybody, until next time, keep your eye to the sky.